Okay. That will be going down to number 7 then?
Yes. Let me make an announcement that we will have public comments at the end of each agenda item and for the consent agenda at the beginning. So, Don, please proceed.
Okay. All right, so this updated long-range plan, the next meeting we'll be asking for approval of the cost feasible plan as part of this, so we want to give an overview of it. We had 307 surveys that were responded to. I will say that 2 of the surprising things are that much older, I guess you'd say, from the surveys that came in, from the age side of it, and also how many years people lived here. There were a lot of people who lived here more than 20 years that responded. So average travel is the most were from 10 to 20 miles per day. Transportation system changes in the last 5 years. Essentially, did it get better or worse? There were a couple of people that said much better, which is surprising. But anyway, 36% much worse. Safety concerns, no different than we were talking about the Safe Streets for All. Distracted, aggressive drivers, it was the highest thing out of it. And then obviously from a transportation challenges standpoint, congestion and driver behavior were the highest as well. Transportation use, essentially, what do? Most of them drive alone. If you look at that percentage, it's about 77%. That is about the average when you look at the overall everybody driving. Preferred travel options, driving alone was 45%, and then improved transit was second. So essentially, look at widening roads, essentially, was what people were saying. Desired improvements to bicycle and ped facilities is not applicable. How I travel was the first one, but connecting existing sidewalks and pathways, essentially filling in gaps and stuff, was the second or the highest response that was directly to that point. Transportation improvements ranked first by respondents. That it had different ones you could do, but essentially expand existing roads was 43%, and complete streets came in at 25%. So this is the current needs plan as part of it. The unfortunate part is we don't have enough money to cover a good portion of this, and one of the things that's impacted the most is the state roads that are not the SIS. And when I say the SIS, the Strategic Intermodal System, that is like I-75, State Road 80, State Road 31. Transit needs, Lee-Tran, I think next meeting we'll do the 10-year plan, which is the TDP. This kind of expands this about 15 years beyond that time frame. You'll see some of the things like, let's say, the mobility on demand, which will be bigger than the areas, but the newer areas like Cape Coral, San Carlos Park. We did some ferry stuff in here as well. That's probably more from a private standpoint, but it's trying to match up with whatever plans they do out there to try to be multimodal and connect with it. So this is the prioritization criteria, and I will tell you that in the end, it doesn't really matter as much as project commitment, the third bullet in there, maintenance of assets at the bottom, and essentially in the sense of what's already in the, it's already gone through either PD&E or design, already moving forward, because if you talk about how much money you have and trying to match that up, that's really where we're at the moment. This was the needs plan project prioritization for the first 25 projects. Some of them, obviously, the ones like Cape Coral Bridge matched up with what we're doing. There's a few of them in here that don't. But again, it's back to how far can the money go? And not really starting a whole bunch of new projects is really where we're at the moment. So this is what ends up being in the cost feasible plan, matching up the project cost to what is the revenues at this point. And so you'll notice on some of this, obviously, the ones that are moving forward, like Alico Extension, the Strategic Intermodal System projects, the I-75, the rest of the way up to State Road 80, the first portion up to Corkscrew, of course, is with the moving Florida forward. But other things that didn't get in there are sections of 78 because of the funding from the state side of it. Hopefully some of that will change over time. One of the things with the revenues this time around, and they said, well, we lowered the revenues because you don't get what we tell you we got in the past. And they were too far. We had over $1 billion for state roads last time, and it's about $300 million this time. But I think it will probably end up being a little better than that. So we need to be flexible to be able to do amendments and stuff as things come up, and hopefully get some grant funding as well. From the cost feasible and the transit side, so some of the micro mobility stuff's in there, improvements to some of the improvements to essentially frequency, some frequency improvements where you get picked up a little bit more often. So let's get to the tables themselves. This will be strictly in there. This is kind of a work in progress at the moment, trying to match stuff up. And then we have our public workshop on October 7th, and then we'll bring all this back for approval at the next meeting. So the only project from the state side that we're able to fund all the way through construction is US 41 on Bonita Beach Road. When you start looking at the multipliers of, you know, the inflating the construction costs in an outer year and matching that up, some of these things are way more than the revenues that are in those future years. But we do have the beginning phases for State Road 78 from Bernstow to US 41 and from I-75 to 31 as well on State Road 78. Trying to get some of the phases in there so we can try to go after grants, get whatever federal money we can as well. I also added in one new project, the new I-75 interchange in North Lee, for an interchange justification report and a project development environment study. Obviously have some planning money that we'll talk about if we get a quorum earlier in the agenda as well. So this is strategic intermodal system, easy for me to say. This is like I-75, a lot of projects in there. Not all the interchanges, for instance, all the way through construction. I've already had some calls about, well, what about Bonita Beach Road? Unfortunately, all they have right now is through design for some of that. But the I-75 widening for managed lanes, essentially 10 lanes north of Corkscrew, is in there at least through 2050. Unfortunately, it's in an outer year. It also has one interchange all the way through construction, which is the Alico Road Terminal Access Road. Essentially, if you've been there, how much that all backs up in there, that's to try to address some of those issues. So I've separated out as well the federal money that from on state system, and then federal money for off-system roads as well. And the reason for that is they had some off-system that was identified, and when you look at the funding sources for it, it's things like SIGP, which is County Incentive Grant Program. Those are not going to be funded for on-state, so I separated that out this time. The countywide signal update final phase, we've been trying to do this for years. The design is underway right now. Hopefully it will be quicker than 2031 to 2035, but at least fit it in there for construction. I say that because when you're doing a technology project like that, you better not wait around 10 years before you actually do it. Big Carlos Bridge replacement, this is one way that maybe we can do some things in the future too. I know it's under construction right now, but this was payback essentially, where we did some money ourselves, and then there was some other federal money that FDOT kicked in, which was $25 million. It was supposed to be half of what the cost was. It ended up being $85 million, but at least it's some money towards it. The Hickory Bridge replacement, those are a beginning PD&E phase that got from an appropriation. Old 41, I left that portion in there. I don't think it's going to get constructed as widening, but there are some things with the intersection and maybe the little bypass. We're talking with Bonita staff about that. And I say that because the section down in Collier ended up ballooning to $90 million just for the right-of-way. So right now we're just trying to get the PD&E completed. Bernstow Road from Van Buren to Charlotte, I kind of split Charlotte County line. I split the money between federal and federal and Lee County, also to make that available for whatever federal funding we can do, but the bigger portions on the county side at this point. So this is the county projects. Essentially what I did here is I followed their 3 tiers of project. I got down to the beginning of the third tier. The only inconsistent thing about that is they had some bridges in the third tier that have replacement by 2026, 2030. I included all those bridge replacements that are needed as part of that as well. For Bonita Springs, I ended up keeping in the rebuilding of Bonita Beach Road, also completing US 41 at Bonita Beach Road. That had some local funding on the first phase of design as well, and the Sandy Lane extension, I left that in there as well. City of Cape Coral, I did match up some of the stuff that was on the mobility plan. We'll see what comes out in the future as well and amend that to be more consistent with that moving forward. Village of Estero, I just put the 2 projects in there that are ongoing as part of that process and trying to match that up with the revenues that were there. A City of Fort Myers, the Edison Ave extension, Challenger Road extension, those projects are moving forward, and the Hanson Street that was in there from before. And then the last table in here is the private funding. That's the State Road 31 that Babcock's doing, Kingston Boulevard, which is part of Kingston Development, doing Corkscrew and State Road 82, and then this east-west, which is kind of a intersection bypass at Ben Hill and Alico Road that was pulled out many years ago. So that's it at the moment. Are there any questions or comments?
Questions or comments for Director Scott?
Can you go back to that the very first slide where you're identifying priorities?
This one here?
Next one, yeah, that's it.
Okay. So this was based on the prioritization process. We have to follow certain federal requirements as part of that. It's not exactly how everything falls through. I was surprised, actually, sometimes they don't match up very well, but like Cape Coral Bridge, I-75, those are in there. Some of the other projects that are at least moving forward, and then some in there that aren't going to be moving forward as well. But this is what, when you look at that scoring criteria, this is how they fall.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for public comments on this agenda item. Any public comments? Okay, seeing no public comments, we'll move to the next agenda item, number 8, also a non-voting item, Don, covering finance options for Burnt Store Road.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because the person that requested that is not at the meeting today, but I did look at, and it came up because we were talking about trying to move up Burnt Store Road, and I had to remember in the past I had done a state infrastructure bank. I will say it was a little different. Back in those days, we did it for 2%, and it was almost like you made an offer, like, well, can I get, you'd put in an application and say, what if I pay 2%? And they go, oh, that's great. Now it's set on the Treasury, state, and local government series rates, which is anywhere from 3.69 to 4.9%, depending on the term of it, how long you're getting it. I will say one of the things is that the maximum loan amount is 75% of the project cost, but I will tell you, when you start looking at the details of it, the average project, when you take all the projects that have been funded over the years, and this was just through 2020, but when you took it all, it was around $20 million. And we're talking about a $160 million project as part of that process. So between the state SIB, State Infrastructure Bank, and the Federal Infrastructure Bank, the state controls that, and they will, I talked to them, they basically said, we'll decide which one makes more sense if you move forward with it. It doesn't change much. It is about the same amount when you started looking at it. So the other thing I looked at is the Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. It's called TIFIA. That used to be only 33% of a project. It actually just got increased this summer to 49% of the project. And the minimum project of $50 million, minimum loan essentially is $50 million. So that would work for if you're trying to go after like $80 million, but you still have to make $80 million up. And there's also a bunch of transaction fees from anywhere from $400,000 to $700,000 because you have to hire outside advisors that eventually say that, you can pay your bills and all that kind of stuff. And there's also an annual loan fee of $13,000 a year. Now, the important part out of this is when I was talking to them, it says we don't have an application. Essentially, their application is not open right now. They don't believe it's going to be. They're probably going to reconsider next year. There's a lot of insurity right now in the funding of projects. The other side of it, too, is this is all based on how much money is out there. So we don't even know how much capacity, essentially, there is at the moment to even ask for funds. Now, we're not exactly ready for this at the moment either. Still going through the process, but it's something to keep an eye on. But I would say that you have to look at it, if you really want to get it, you have to look at it as kind of you're funding a gap. You're not funding the whole thing. But anyway.
Don, could you go over with the build up to that $160 million for the project? How much is right away? How much is? I know it's on there somewhere, but just
yeah, I didn't include the right of way. That was just the construction cost. I think the county's starting to do some of the right of way as part of the process, so I didn't include the right of way. So yeah, the $160 million was just construction for them.
Okay, that's pre-engineering, engineering right through completion.
Yeah, right now, the design is funded up to 60%, and as part of that, they can start, they could also require right-of-way that people don't want you to, where you have to go through the condemnation process. But it has to be completed for design, and there's $30 million for right-of-way that needs to be purchased as well. That's the estimate. Now, the design is underway. I think they're saying it'll be completed by next summer.
Any other questions or comments? Don, I had a question. Neither of these on a standalone basis look very promising for financing, but could the infrastructure bank loan and maybe the TIFIA loan be combined?
So one of the answers I got was yes, you could do a federal SIB and the TIFIA together. I will say I kind of wonder how they would, because you have to do a primary source of repayment and a secondary source, so you're essentially doing it on both of them. I'm not sure how they would look at that as they're going through the process, but it was said that you could do that.
In theory, I guess.
In theory, yes. That's the other side of it. It doesn't mean that you put in and they go, okay, great, we're going to give you money. That's the other side of it. They weigh a lot of things as part of that process.
Joe?
I'm going to probably have someone throw something at me, but basically, I mean, we do the bridges through tolling. Any chance of putting a toll on Burn Store? And
I don't think
it's a wild, crazy guess, but
yeah, I don't think you could do that. But it's interesting you bring it up, because one of the things I'm wondering about with a new interchange is there a way for us to because it's a new roadway connection? Is there potential of doing that as part of the process? So.
Why couldn't you do it on Burn Store?
When some of the, I'm not going to go the whole way, but some of the things like for the interstate, for instance, when you use federal money to do this original 6-laning, then you can't toll those lanes that were already done. And I'm not sure it's the same way with Burn Store, but they have accepted federal money. They'd have other issues they'd have to go through. And you'd be talking about having, okay, I got lanes for people that, it would be a much different looking typical section.
Any other questions or comments? I'll go to public comments then on this agenda item, Burnt Store Road finance options. Any public comments?
I have unfortunate news. We will not get quorum. I heard from Kate, and Duke and Nelson Lasher are not going to be able to attend, so we can proceed as a committee of the whole on.
No, I don't think we can approve these items.
No, because they still need to come back at some future point.
Yeah.
So shall we proceed then with the non-voting items done?
I think we're pretty much done at this point, except for doing like FDOT and transit reporting then.
Yeah, we can do that. And I'll ask, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Any public comments? Seeing none. Lee Tran report. Welcome.
Good morning. Kelly Fernandez from Letran. I have a very brief update for you this morning regarding our projects and ridership. Our fixed route ridership for this fiscal year is averaging just over 148,000 monthly riders, which is within 4% of last year's ridership. Our paratransit and passport services are serving between 550 and 600 passengers daily. This includes our transportation disadvantage trips. Mobility on Demand serviced 5,100 passengers for the month of August, 3,635 of those passengers coming from Bonita Springs, 1,425 passengers in Lehigh Acres. In addition, we have our Route 515 circulator that served an additional 2,100 passengers for a total of 3,525 in that area. Our 2026 to 2035 Transit Development Plan continues on schedule for completion and delivery to FDOT in January. The steering committee last met on August 27th, and the timeline for approval, as Don mentioned, is upcoming to the MPO committee meetings in November, followed by the MPO board in December, and then the Board of County Commissioners in January. The 88 Bus Stop Improvements Project continues, which includes the design, engineering, and construction of 136 bus stops. The design phase for the first 50 is complete. CEI solicitation closed last week, and we received 8 proposals. Construction will be advertised by the first of the year. Design for our electric bus project is currently in progress for the charging infrastructure in anticipation of our bus delivery in fall of 2026. Our vendor ChargePoint has completed the fleet and energy route modeling and delivered our 50% design plans. The advertisement for full design will go out this month and will be followed by construction and installation of that equipment. The FDOT SR 865 project on Fort Myers Beach related to 2 bus stop pull-offs continues to progress. The traffic signal at 5th Street is expected to be activated by mid-October, along with the installation of the yield to bus signage. And when completed, buses will no longer need to detour. Delivery and installation of new shelters for the 2 stops is expected by the end of October. And Leetran is excited to provide tram service for the Island Hopper Festival on Captiva Island, which begins today and runs through the 22nd. And then on Fort Myers Beach on September 26th, and it runs through the 28th. This is a collaborative effort with the VCB to support our coastal communities. And that's all I have for you.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Fernandez? Seeing none, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Brings us to the FDOT report. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, for the FDOT report, I have a report on the Wilson, forgive me, Piggott Bridge. Additional emergency repairs were completed on Monday. The repair work mainly centered to fix specific weld joints. There are plans to replace the SB grid deck. The installation for this repair will be planned and public notice will be given. This work will be done overnight to mitigate traffic congestion. Options are being discussed to mitigate further damage to the street grid deck being caused by truckloads. They plan load reduction to 17 tons. This will require enforcement, which is difficult due to the nature of the roadway, lack of space to pull over the trucks, etc. And they are considering reducing the speed limit to 25 miles per hour over the bridge. Also, there will be a in-person public meeting on October 28th for US 41 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That'll be at Lakes Regional Library, Meeting Room A, 15290, Bass Road, Fort Myers.
Which project is that? US 41 and?
SR 45, State Road 45.
What was the date of that public meeting?
October 28th.
Any questions or comments for the
Location again?
Lakes Regional Library.
Good question. Commissioner?
Do we know how much longer, we get a lot of calls, obviously Route 31, say Route 31 with the bridge closure, how much longer those bridge closures will be going on and the timing of those for the placement of the grates on the bridge?
So what they're saying is that they're fabricating a piece to replace it, and when they do it, they'll do it at night. They don't have a specific time yet when that's going to happen.
And somebody from FDOT, are they been using FHP for traffic control? Because I know the traffic control, I think the issue is at Bay Shore and 31. If they have somebody there working the light, usually in those details they have FHP already staged for if there's people working in heavy traffic. Could they work that light manually to keep that traffic flowing? Because we're getting reports of 2 to 3 hour delays. People want to come from north and east from Charlotte County and Lee County.
Yeah, we can get with them to
Yeah, I was just thinking, it was recommended to me, and actually, some LCSO members were wondering why they weren't working that light with FHP. If they were doing the traffic detail, they should be working the light manually to keep that flow going from Bay Shore to 31.
Right. I know the interchange has been horrible too.
Right.
So, yeah.
6-lane it.
Well, it will happen. At least that one's programmed on
A
30.
flyer would be great too. Yeah, there you go.
Replace the bridge, and now you kind of know why it needs to be replaced.
Thank you.
Any other questions pertaining to the Department of Transportation report? Brings us to announcements. Don, do you have any?
The next meeting is October 17th, and then also in there, I put in the notice for our public workshop on the cost feasible plan, October 7th at the North Fort Myers Library.
Any information or distribution items?
And that was it. Oh, I did have one other thing. I'm just bringing it up. I've been getting a bunch of letters and emails and stuff about noise walls on I-75. The PD&E public hearing was postponed, not canceled. Some people think it was canceled. It will be coming back at some point, so we're saving what we can do with this and get with it, or getting with FDOT as part of that process, but just so you know.
Thank you. Any members of the board have any comments at this time before we adjourn? Bill?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just ask that their continued focus be on Burn Store, and I see it's on the it's on the radar, but as we're making priorities and whatnot, we've literally only got a decent one north-south connector for us, and so as the decisions are made and as funding becomes limited and whatnot, that we've got a number of east-west connectors through our county, but the number of north-south connectors that we have, we've got 75, we've got 41, we've got 31, but all the way on the west side, that Burn Store Road is so critical for us as that quarter gains population. We can't forget about getting people north and south as we're concerned about getting people east and west. Can't forget north and south.
Those constituents won't let me forget it, so.
Okay.
Any other comments for the good of the organization? Seeing none, we are unable to proceed on agenda items 1 through 6 due to the absence of a quorum, so we've reached the end of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Objections?